It would be irrational, stupid, foolish, but they'd fucked up his car.
This is I Don't Even Own a Television, Traveler number 5, Road War.
There are books that are good, there are books that are bad. There's some books so fucking awful you wish you never had read them at all, 'cause a novel can ruin your life. Hey buddy, I don't even own a television.
Welcome to I Don't Even Own a Television, a podcast about books that kind of stink. I am J.W. Friedman.
I'm Chris Collision.
And we're talking about Traveler number 5, Road War by D.B. Drumm with 2 M's.
The one and only with 2 M's. We're going to be beating that drum the entire episode.
Oh, Jesus. Right out of the gate with some horrible puns.
Yeehaw!
It's what you tune in for. So,
I've had 3 cups of coffee and I'm feeling pretty dadly.
Well, speaking of dadly, this right here is a long-running series of men's adventure novels called Traveler. And much like Lou Bega, we elected to begin with number 5.
Right.
For reasons.
So, The Traveler, now that's, this is obviously a series of books about like a blues rock band, right? Real traveling men, just moving from town to town, entertaining the people.
With a vest full of harmonicas and a trunk full of cocaine and guns.
Man, that sounds way better. Like, why has Carl Hiaasen not written those books?
That's
awesome.
John Popper's real life.
What? Dude, he will find us and he will be mean to us on the internet.
Quite possibly. No, this is a book about post-apocalyptic world, which kind of has a lot of similarities to a particular movie series that was pretty popular around the time this came out.
I believe this is set in the nightmarish, drug-ravaged post-apocalyptic world of 2004.
Yes, post-nuclear apocalypse, we should mention.
Right.
And people drive around in heavily armored vehicles and live in kind of gang-like tribal societies and
fighting over the remnants of fuel and ammunition they can no longer manufacture. And one loner drifts from place to place having adventures. What series is this? Is the
well, here. Let me actually quote the author himself. This is in an interview with Dark Echo, which is a website, and he says, "I wrote some of those Traveler series ripoff of Road Warrior books. I didn't originate the series. There are some imaginative bits in them. I had twin boys to feed by then, and later on, I had child support to pay." So, yeah, this is Mad Max, pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very, very much so. It's also in the tradition, I would say, of kind of an old-fashioned adventure book.
Yeah.
You know, because you described it off air as a treasure hunt, and that's exactly what it is. We'll get into that in the plot. And it's just incredibly episodic, but none of the episodes take more than like 4 pages. And it's just, you know, adventure in the caving-in mine, adventure in the ambush in the valley, adventure in the hostage scenario, adventure in this. You know, if you can think of a scenario that would have been in an old adventure serial, it's probably in this book, which is all told 158 pages.
Yeah, it's got that Clive Cussler kind of feel to it for sure. That Dirk Pitt kind of, you know, men's adventure, capital M, capital A.
Right.
That genre. I had in my notes here that it's basically kind of like a mashup of Mad Max and City Slickers 2: The Legend of Curly's Gold. Because can I see the copy of the book? We're sharing one here. Yeah, okay, this is what's written on the copy of the book, or on the back of the book, is, well, let's do plot in 60 seconds first, and then I'll describe it the way they did.
Nobody knows if you win it or not. You got 60 seconds to give them the plot. Plot is 60 seconds.
All right, so you want to do a plot in 60 here?
I do, and I'm going to fall back on the book's own self-descriptions. So I'm going to start with what's on the front cover of the book, then read as much of the prologue as I can in 60 seconds, and then we can turn to what's on the back of the book.
That sounds good. I think that's all anyone needs to know.
Yep.
So let's begin now.
He's blasting his way to the end of the wasteland in search of a treasure called death. Prologue. The Road Predators. He was riding the aftershocks. Civilization had collapsed, and its collapse sent out shockwaves, and the man they called Traveler rode the shockwaves like a highway surfer. He was an automotive savage, using the dying machinery of a dead society to fight tooth and nail for survival. He was a highway nomad. He was a post-Holocaust hunter-gatherer. He was a man trying to forget he had a past. Normally, he was a loner. But back there, in a miniature Holocaust, a blood-soaked killing ground that had been his vengeful confrontation with Colonel Vallone and what remained of the United States Army, he'd found an ally, a partner. The man was called simply Link. He was a big, bald, hard-eyed, wisecracking black man of undeterminable age, wearing tatters, but carrying himself like an Ethiopian emperor.
We're out of time, but yet I think you're getting a good picture of it. I want to read the copy from the back of the book because I love it so much. Traveler got the map from the old man in the hole, a crazed prospector who'd weathered out the apocalypse sitting on a fortune in buried bullion. Next on S-Town. Sorry. That gold, Traveler knew, would be anyone's tickets out of hell. But the old man also had a nasty sense of humor. And if he was willing to give up the map to his treasure, it was only because the map led straight to death. Before Traveler could floor the gas pedal of his meat wagon, capital M, capital W, the treasure hunt was on. A hunt in which there could be nothing but losers. A hunt that was really a total ... road war.
Road war.
What a rush.
It's amazing to me that this book is fairly explicitly in a series that's a Road Warrior knockoff.
And it's called Road War.
And it's called Road War. I like that they did hold off until the 5th book in the series to play that card. But, like, I don't know. Like,
the next one's called Beyond Lightning Sphere.
Exactly. I'm trying to think, like, what is a currently popular knockoff, like, obvious knock? It'd be like if Battlestar Galactica's second season, like the original 70s one, had been called, like, War in the Stars. Yeah. But with some disco. Yeah. Or if, like, I don't know, like, who's ripping off Harry Potter? If, like, in the 5th book,
yeah, like Transmorphers or something like
that. Exactly.
Yeah.
Except actually, that's exactly right. This is more or less a what do they call that? Mockbuster.
It's an Asylum Productions presents a novel,
right?
That is basically Mad Max.
And I think it's a good thing because the spirit is slightly different. Like the Mockbusters are kind of, let's put this out to try to trick people out of their money. Whereas this is pretty explicitly, hey, you remember those Road Warrior movies? Those are really cool, but it's 1985, and so we only have 2, maybe the 3rd is out by now. If you'd like to spend more time thinking about stuff like that, here you go.
Yep. We know you liked that movie. Here's a book that's pretty much the same thing. Oh, wait, there's 8 more.
But it feels almost like that kind of spirit of I don't know, I hate to say fan service, but it does feel like that.
Well, also it almost is self-parodical. And as we'll get into later on, I don't think it's accidental, but we have a lot to talk about when it comes to DB Drumm here. And I want to save that until a little bit later. So let's go into high points, low points.
High points are high, and low points are low. High points, low points, get ready to go.
Low points are low.
I just wanted to do the James Hetfield.
Low.
So in this segment,
I want to put out one last time, and by one last time, I mean I'm going to do this until somebody does it. Our society sucks until there's a J.R. Ross soundboard to go alongside the James Hetfield soundboard. Nerds, get on it.
Okay, so high points, low points. Let's start out with some high points. You go first.
Okay, I want to bracket one entire set of high points, which we'll get to later, which is that this book is by a novelist who I like and find very interesting, whose name is John Shirley.
Yeah.
That's why I kind of picked it. Well, a combination.
Spoiler.
I knew he wrote a series of these. Oh, should we skip this?
No, I'm screwing around.
I knew he wrote some in the series, so I went looking, and this was the cheapest one I could find. The sticker on the back says 99 cents.
Yes, he wrote number 2 through 6.
Right.
Number 1, and then all the ones following them were written by somebody named Ed Naha.
Who I know nothing about.
Yeah, I don't think he's written much else. But Shirley kind of jumped in there and did 2 through 6, and apparently, didn't have a super high opinion of the source material, but seemed to enjoy himself writing it nonetheless. So.
Definitely. So I'm going to say that my number one high point here is the good parts of the prose, because there are moments of this that I don't think I've read anywhere else, and definitely did not see coming in a book like this.
Yeah.
Some of the descriptions are kind of rote and get it over with, but some of the descriptions, particularly of like weird ass costumes and weird ass tanks and stuff,
and anything gross,
are really good. And you just get these tossed off lines like, "The ground was barren as the soul of a banker," which you really don't expect in a book like this.
I got Cormac McCarthy vibes at times, but like as written to be delivered by like Roddy Piper.
It's like Cormac McCarthy on coffee.
Yeah, if Cormac McCarthy did a novelization of Escape from New York, maybe.
Yep.
That's kind of the vibe we're looking at here. And I agree. I really enjoyed the style. I guess that's kind of like my high point, is just that I like the tone of the book. I described it as men grunting and shooting. There's a lot of just random swearing. People getting very angry about their motor vehicles. And just all in all, there's just kind of a I don't give a fuck attitude. If for a men's adventure novel, it's surprisingly like anti-authoritarian. The tone of the book feels, I hate to use the term, but given what the author goes on to do, it feels kind of punk rock.
Oh, yeah. Can I do my second high point?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is absolutely the high point. Like, I know it's a little bit pandering when moments like the ones I'm about to describe happen, but whatever, it's still pleasing to me. If you're reading a post-apocalyptic book about a guy with a gun, like killing dozens of people in the pursuit of basically selfish ends, but that guy is wearing a Clash t-shirt and distracts a bunch of the, highwaymen he's trying to sneak past by overwhelming them by playing the Stooges really fucking loud. This is a book I'm going to enjoy reading, and both of those things happen in this.
You know what? This kind of makes me wonder. Now, I was just thinking about the new Mad Max movie had the guy who plays guitar strapped to the car.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's a feedback loop kind of thing. I wonder if George Miller was aware of this book.
That's a really good question. I'm going to say yes, just because I like the idea that George Miller and Cormac McCarthy were both like picking their books off of spinners at truck stops in the mid-'80s.
Yep, I'm going to pick up this Steppenwolf tape and this book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool. I guess I'll do my second high point then, too. And I just like, this is kind of weird and meta, but when I was doing research, I Googled this quite a bit, and it's amazing to me how frequently this book shows up on lists of like survival fetishist kind of people.
Oh, shit.
Like dudes who love talking about like the inevitability of doomsday and what you need to have in your fucking fallout shelter and shit. They're like always like, if you're gonna have one book, it should be a traveler book. And
what?
I'm telling you, it's all over the place. Look it up.
What?
It's so strange.
Oh my God.
Like people don't seem to recognize. I feel like it's almost like the RoboCop effect, where people don't recognize the satire of what they're consuming.
I think that's if people are not recognizing that this book is at least occasionally mocking the genre it's in and trying to subvert the tropes it's enacting, they are missing a bunch of it. That said, this book does the thing that Clockwork Orange, the movie, does as well. This is something that Quentin Tarantino pointed out. He's like, that's an anti-violence movie, except the parts of the movie that it's obviously most excited about and it's most interested in are the hyper-violent parts.
Well, that's very true.
So it's kind of this weird having its cake and eating it too thing, and that is actually a weak point of this book. I think it is kind of anti-authoritarian. It knows full well that violence is not actually a viable answer in the long run, but it's still really excited to tell you about this cool violence.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think there is kind of some weird weirdness at work here because the author, like, before he started writing these, started out kind of doing almost pure horror and like very like, I mean, he did a book actually. I had put it in my notes here. Where is it? Oh yeah. One of his first novels was called Camus of Catazar, The Black Hole of Carcosa. So he's kind of coming from that world of like Chambers and beers and Lovecraft, and you could tell he really likes describing slimy things and gory things, and that does kind of come through in a way that made me feel a little queasy at times. What are they called? The wasp things.
Oh, the is it the road wasps?
The desert wasps or the road wasps? I forget what they're called, but
road wasps.
Yeah, it's fucking nasty. Like
that's pretty nasty. I guess if we're verging on low points here,
we do need to do some. It's kind of hard because this book is straight up enjoyable.
Right.
So
I will say that the most consistently unenjoyable thing to me has to do with those road wasps. This is a gang of kind of nomadic highwaymen, predators of drivers.
Yeah.
And the leader is a very tough woman. And she's presented with all kinds of kind of bull dyke cliches and described, I think, in those exact words several times. And for a book that otherwise, as we said, is politically surprisingly good, that really wrong-footed me. And it just seemed needless, too. It didn't actually add anything to the character at all. It was just gratuitous and pointless.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of gets into what I would think of as a low point of the book, is that it's almost depressingly dude-centric in a way that makes you feel a little embarrassed reading it. It's almost got like a Guns and Ammo vibe to it at times.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of that is what this genre is, so you can only hate it for that for so much, but like at times it's kind of like reading Axe Body Spray, and that's a little tough, even though you know it's being self-aware and
right.
I don't know, like but that's a very soft low point for me because it is, at the end of the day, a fun book to read.
Yeah, I am actually struggling. I'm just going to say that the other end of the spectrum of the surprisingly good prose, I should point, is how often the prose is bad. So you do get a surprising glimmer of good writing, but it's about every 4 or 5 pages. And then the rest of the pages are very obviously I believe hastily composed would be the phrase. There's scenes that seem to almost recur verbatim in the span of about 5 pages. And there is a lot of kind of by rote, get it over with kind of writing, even just in that first page that I read. You know, the repetition of shockwaves, the repetition of he was. Yeah. Some of it feels like it's trying to be kind of incantory and deliberate, and some of it just feels like I'm going to write 3 sentences, cross 2 of them out later, and pick the one I like best, but you never got to that spot.
No, that's fair.
I'm just saying it's bad for a 158-page book that doesn't actually start until page 7.
Yeah.
To feel like it has any padding, and this book definitely feels like it's got some padding.
Yeah, I guess since we're doing low points, I guess that will be kind of my second one, is that this book is very episodic in nature, the way you described, but at times it feels incredibly disconnected, and it does have kind of, I've described it frequently on this show as the tone of, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and very rarely very rarely is an attempt made to circle back and have anything relate to anything that's happened previously in the book. So it does feel a little like you're reading a bunch of short stories that were crammed together, and I mean very short stories.
Oh, yeah. The outline of this, I'm going to assume that there was an outline, because that's how professional writers with twins to feed and child support to pay get things done. I'm going to assume that the outline basically just read chapter 1, ... to page 6, chapter 2, ... page 12, chapter 3, ... page 18, all the way through until the acceptable contractual length, and that it just sort of happened from there.
Yeah, this is the second to last one he did for the series, too. And it was noted that, like, I guess before this, he had done a bunch of trilogies on his own, and he was very used to the trilogy format. And, like, one of the things that I was reading about was that this book, I guess, is the first time he had written a series that was longer than 3 books, and maybe he just didn't really know how to go past that. You know?
Although I have read, I'm going to link to this in the show notes. There's a really wonderful website that just does nothing but capsule reviews of men's adventure books. That does not address this particular volume, but does talk about other books in the series. Mm-hmm. And he mentioned something that you mentioned, which is, so book 1 was written by the actual originator of the series. 2 through 6, John Shirley. Then it goes back to the original guy. Supposedly,
it's a real flea flicker.
Yeah. What he says is that if you read all of them straight through, the 2 through 6 actually stand alone pretty well and do kind of conclude. Huh. Right? So he sort of reboots it already in book 2 and gives him a backstory and gives him all this stuff. And then apparently does have like a climactic battle with the big bad, who doesn't actually appear in this book on screen.
The Black Rider.
Yeah, something like that. Although I think this is actually a Fu Manchu parody. So again, the politics are not always going to be something you're going to like.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's a men's adventure novel with all that comes with that. Let's talk a little bit about John Shirley, I guess, because I think we should, because he is pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
He has a career that spans a pretty broad swath of genre and is considered influential in a lot of things that he's done. Obviously not these.
Well, except that we now know that this is directly responsible for The Road. The second best Mad Max movie.
It's true.
Actually, I'm going to say the third best Mad Max movie, etc. So hugely influential, these books.
But in addition to this, I mean, kind of after this period, he was really one of kind of the pioneers of the cyberpunk movement in writing. Like, he's a contemporary of William Gibson and Bruce Sterling and all those kind of guys. And like,
he was widely credited by those guys as the guy who brought punk to science fiction.
It's true, and he was in a bunch of punk bands at the time too. Or kind of new wave-ish bands, but still.
The moderately listenable Sado Nation out of Portland, Oregon. I forget the name of his second band. It was something like The Obsessed or something.
Obsession.
That I think is less good. Sado Nation is actually intermittently very good. I actually saw John Shirley read a number of years ago in SF at one of those like Writers with Drinks or Drinks with Writers things. It was hosted by Charlie Jane Anders, who's a local science fiction writer of some note. Mm-hmm. And he opened his reading by just sticking his head to the side of the microphone and bellowing, "Woke up this morning and I got myself a beer. The future's uncertain and the end is always near."
Hell yeah, dude.
To an audience of absolute crickets. And he just kind of looked around. He's a pretty commanding guy. And he just looked around and just shrugged and was like, "Well, old Jimbo always was a little uneven."
Yeah, I guess like he and William Gibson kind of were early collaborators. Gibson saw him in a band and wanted to be friends with him because he thought he looked cool,
right?
Which I think is pretty rad. And yeah, he's really considered kind of one of the proto-cyberpunk guys. He's really influential in the horror genre, like Clive Barker and Peter Straub, but a bunch of people like that have said that he's hugely influential.
I've read a bunch of John Shirley.
Yeah.
I haven't liked as much of it as I wanted to because I like the guy so much, and I think he's such an interesting dude. I think his most successful writing does tend to be in horror. He's really quite good at that. And the rest of the time, he writes about interests. You know, his interests are the same as ours. You know, he's interested in cities. He's interested in oppression. He's interested in rebellion.
He's really interested in climate change.
He's really interested in climate change. He's really interested in...
Next on S-Town.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not going to stop doing that all show long.
It's just that he's also really interested in, like, Gurdjieff and chaos magic and Jung. And these are things that leave me super duper cold. But his horror writing is great. I actually recommend unreservedly at least trying to read City Come A-Walking, which I think is his most successful science fiction book, which is about San Francisco and its ruination, except it was written in like 1983 or something.
That's the one that Clive Barker says is one of the best books ever written, which I'm like, as far as horror goes, that's pretty high praise. But here's where things get weird, right? Like, at some point...
They get weird all over the place with him. We should also mention, he was a junkie for years.
Yeah. But at some point in the mid-2000s, he got really into doing adaptations and work in extended universes. So he's written novels for Batman and Predator and Aliens novel series. He's also written video game adaptations like Watch Dogs, BioShock, and several books about Borderlands. And he's done a bunch of movie adaptations like
including
Constantine, Resident Evil, and most importantly, Doom the movie. The novelization of Doom the movie.
Wait, is that true?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to have to do that as an extra. It'll be a spin-off extra from maybe our first extra?
Yeah, one of our Patreon episodes was about Doom the movie.
Right.
And which we did specifically because on the main show we had just done a novel based on Doom.
Right. So we've got to continue down this road. But most importantly, because I know that we've got a lot of #ladies listening, he wrote the screenplay for The Crow.
Yeah, he did.
So there you go.
He also wrote something called Z-Boys in the Robot Graveyard, and I don't know what that is, but I desperately want to know.
Oh, God, I hope it's Z-Boys as in Dogtown and the Z-Boys.
It's got a Z at the end and the beginning, so you know it's fucking cool.
But, okay,
so I do want to say, so on the one hand, you've got here a hugely influential author in probably two separate kind of subgenres of fiction.
Right.
And then on the other hand, you've got a guy who is like IDEOTV personified. Like, he literally wrote a short story about Dungeons and Dragons that's in a compendium that also has Alan Dean Foster and Kevin J. Anderson in it.
What?
Yeah, so it's so hard for me to rectify these two writers in my brain as the same person.
I think, fundamentally what we've got here is a, capital W's all around working writer. And, he wrote this because at the time, Men's Adventure under a pseudonym was a viable way to pay the bills. That has gone the way of the snap brim fedora. And what we are left with now is, video game adaptations and novelizations.
It's the same audience, basically. It's just the modern version of the same audience,
I now no longer like Men's Adventure books.
Well, when you think about it, it's young men, right?
Right, yeah.
I mean, I'm not getting any deeper than that. I'm not. I know saying that right after you mentioned a fedora makes it sound loaded. That's not what I meant. We didn't mention this yet, and I figure we've just both been holding back on the fact of he's written lyrics for 18 Blue Oyster Cult songs.
That is true.
And his first novel ever was called Transmaniacon.
I want to talk a little bit in depth about this.
Okay. Because for the people at home, Collision drove 4 hours yesterday to go see Blue Oyster Cult perform in a casino.
I did. I drove basically the width of Kansas, one of the wider states, to see Blue Oyster Cult last night. I am currently wearing a Blue Oyster Cult t-shirt. It is not my only Blue Oyster Cult t-shirt. I probably actually found out about John Shirley because he wrote lyrics for them on a couple of late albums of theirs, including Heaven Forbid and I think Curse of the Hidden Mirror or something. Heaven
Forbid's definitely one. I forget what the other one was.
Yeah. Heaven Forbid I think is the one that's like a little bit better thought of. And here is where it really gets a little tricky. Like, John Shirley is very much, I think, the American Michael Moorcock. He describes himself as prolific to a fault.
That sounds accurate.
His concerns are, as I've mentioned, are very much mine. It's just that his articulation of them and handling of them maybe aren't so much mine.
Oh, so you found his blog too?
Oh, extraordinarily fun. I find his blog every couple of years, and I'm like, I love that this exists. I don't necessarily love anything else about it.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with him on almost every point he makes, but boy, does he have a forceful way of coming across.
Putting it. Yeah. So let me just say that a writer I like very much, writing lyrics for among my favorite bands, I really wish I liked those lyrics and I really wish I liked those songs. And I basically don't, which is just a bummer. But I will say that his writing about Blue Oyster Cult is, bar none, the best writing about Blue Oyster Cult. He wrote a bunch of books set in like kind of what he called the agony rock milieu, which was, again, a joke that got misinterpreted.
Which I feel like happened a lot to this fella.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the entire Traveler thing, and I want to come back to that, so let's put a pin in that for a second.
Okay.
But he calls it agony rock, and still nobody gets the joke, but he's got a number of scenes of like a vampiric rock star who is almost explicitly fronting Blue Oyster Cult, and it's hilarious and actually kind of spooky and intriguing because it reminds you of a time when arena rock, like a band playing in front of, you know, many thousands of people, was a new thing and a frightening thing. Like, older people would go to these shows and be like, I see nothing but kids splayed out on, like, you know, downer barbiturate wreckage.
Yeah, smoking their jazz cigarettes.
And it's freaking me out, man. And, like, there was a real concern in, like, the early 70s when Shirley was first starting to notice this stuff, too, that heavy metal in particular was fascist.
Yeah.
And it is kind of a fascist performance, right? It's a very small group of people dominating a very large group of people and eliciting specific responses at specific times. So, you know, if you get a little high, you can kind of see it. And I love to think through that.
This is the point where I would recommend that everyone listening to this who hasn't already seek out and watch a movie called Heavy Metal Parking Lot.
See, that's the difference between you and me. You recommend Heavy Metal Parking Lot. I recommend you seek out and watch a movie called Heavy Metal.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I that one's good, too, if you've had enough of the jazz cigarettes, the aforementioned JCs.
Put a chair under your door and tell your mom not to bug you.
Yeah, so, yeah, wrap up a towel. Put it under the door so the smoke smell doesn't get out. Light 13 dog choppas because no one's going to get suspicious about that.
Yeah, no one will ever crack the code of why you're suddenly interested in incense and Bob Marley.
So you wanted to come back to the idea of misinterpreted jokes.
I do. And I think we've actually said these words before, but we really need to drill down on this. This is a book where two men drive around in a car for the entirety of the book. What is that car called?
The Meat Wagon.
The Meat Wagon.
Capital Meat, capital Wagon.
Yup. And I if you think this book is playing it straight,
yeah,
I need you to understand that the words Meat Wagon appear on like every third fucking page.
Capitalized.
Yeah.
You're not going to not notice them.
His car is named the Meat Wagon. He drives around in a van with machine guns on the front, and that's cool. But it's called the Meat Wagon, and if you think that's cool, you don't understand that the joke is on you.
In some ways, I just realized that this is almost like kind of a Zucker Brothers take on Mad Max, but written as a novel. Like, there is like a Police Squad vibe here. There's a Naked Gun kind of vibe here, where it's like, it is self-parodical to the point where I feel like you could go into this one of two ways and enjoy it either way. You could be the survivalist prepper writing about it on your website, or you could be someone like us that's spending the whole time just kind of like chuckling to yourself. And I feel like he kind of wrote it for both types of people.
I just want to read something that I think illustrates that point. Traveler and Link fired at the same moment. Traveler squeezing off 3 shots at the 3 men in the Jeep. Link firing a burst at the man to their right with the M16. The 3 in the Jeep went down without firing a shot. Each man with a neat red hole through his forehead. New paragraph. Because, yeah, Traveler was that good. End paragraph. Like, if you don't get that there's some, like, mockery in this.
Yeah. No, I mean, sometimes for fun, I write bad short stories on purpose. And, like, you know, I'll do a lot more fucked up grammar or whatever. But this is kind of that, but structured better.
Right.
Like, this is him trying to pass this off as a serious effort when he's very obviously got his tongue in his cheek the whole way through. Yeah. And I guess that's probably... We're getting close to a good time to take a break, but I think it's fair to say before we go to break, I think both of us would probably recommend this, right?
I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, particularly if you're, you know, queasy about some of the sexual politics.
That's a good point.
But it was not a deal breaker for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did have a lot of fun racing through this book.
Yeah, I really want to go read more Traveler books now, which is really silly, but true.
I have a tab on the old laptop at home open to the collection of this. So, yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
I also just want to say before we go to break, who the fuck is this? Dell Publications. If you want to re-release these as audiobooks narrated by a guy who enjoyed them and sounds a little bit like Tom Servo and works pretty cheap, I just want to say I know a guy. So
get in touch with Collision. He'd be great for it.
Get at us.
We could do a cast recording, and I'll just be Macho Man every time the fucking Traveler talks.
At the very least, there will have to be a small, large production fee levied to my man JW here. So bear that in mind, Dell Publications. But we are ready for that challenge if you choose to put it in front of us.
I'm the DJ. He's the rapper.
In this context only, and spoiler, not even in this context.
Let's go to break. Traveling. What? We're back. It's a war of roads in here. The war of the roadses.
We're on the road war again.
Could do this all day.
Something.
I'm Hawk. That's Animal.
Yeah. Let's see. Who else could we be? There's a little Spencer for Hire, black guy, white guy in this, but less bad than other times, I think.
Yeah, just to give you a visual, also right now I've got my hat on backwards like a total mook because the bill of my hat kept hitting the microphone. So just imagine that I'm Fred Durst now, because for the rest of the podcast, I will be Fred Durst. And I guess we should start out our game segment here with the most popular podcasting segment in rap rock history.
In rap or entertainment.
Yes. Dramatic readings.
Dramatic readings. We're gonna make it sound important. Dramatic readings. Yeah, I got some words for you.
All right, so dramatic readings. We're going to read parts of this book to you and make them sound real good. So I'm going to kick us off here with an excerpt from Chapter 11, The Golden Trail.
Hey-o.
I know. I had the same thought, and then I hated myself. Cue dusty slide guitar. The boy was no good at killing, Traveler thought. If he had been, Link and I would be dead by now. 20 years ago, he'd probably be an English major. Now, there weren't any English majors because there weren't any colleges. But there was still gold, and men still killed for it. As long as there are men in gold, Traveler thought, there'll be murder. They drove the slightly charred meat wagon up the road and around the mountain, looking for the boulder that marked the treasure trail. Traveler several times made out the tracks of the dragster. He was surprised that the flimsy-looking vehicle had made it this far. Traveler was driving. Every time they hit a pothole, the meat wagon bounced, painfully jarring Traveler's insides, his cracked ribs. Link was lying in the back. Rosalita had cleaned the dirt from him, cleansed his wounds with alcohol, and bandaged him. He lay with his head in her lap, asleep or pretending to be. We'll just let it sit there.
Hot.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't even talk about Rosalita, which, yeah, this book does have a woman problem, but so much of it is kind of hard to separate from the parody of the genre that's happening, I feel like. But it's not an excuse, it's still a little rough. But
I mean, it's a Western. Of course they meet and rescue a maiden for Link.
That's a good point.
And I think it's hinted at the end that Link and she are going to basically retire and leave Traveler alone.
Well, that would be good.
So that's kind of cool.
It's probably a good idea to not hang out with Traveler anyway, if there's one thing I've learned from this book.
Jesus Christ. Although I will say, that's a point that hadn't occurred to me. This is probably the least bad end a black sidekick comes to in violent fiction in general.
That's a good point, and especially in this genre, for sure. Yeah, for men's adventure novels, like, this is pretty progressive. That's not necessarily hard. You know, it's a high bar to limbo under, but it gets it done, so.
I mean, we haven't read any ripping action.
We have not. And I think it's time to rip it.
That's when Traveler heard a familiar sound. The roar of the meat wagon's engine turning over, echoing to them from the gully. Link knew how to get past Traveler's booby traps and how to hotwire a car. So Link would get away at least. Traveler shrugged and decided to force the issue here. Let them shoot him. It was better than dying by torture. He smashed an elbow into the gut of the man holding him from behind. The man buckled, gagging. The Spike shouted, "Don't shoot him! Hold him! I want him on the stake! Hold him so I can..." The words froze on her lips. She was staring at something over Traveler's shoulder, something behind him. Then Traveler heard the roar of the meat wagon as it barreled hard at them, and the sound of a blasting Stooges tape in the player. The Wasps had taken the ammo from the overhead guns, but they'd left the sonic ammunition. The road rats were paralyzed with confusion, just long enough. Traveler wrenched free and threw himself aside. The meat wagon roared through the camp and plowed into the cluster of road rats beside the stake. They mingled their screams as its bumper spikes ripped into them. Its ramming wedge smashed them. Its wheels crushed them.
Wow. So yeah, vehicular manslaughter at a mass scale, as well as Iggy and the Stooges being used as a sonic weapon.
Yeah. How you know you're reading a John Shirley book. That's not even the only time in this book that happens.
Well, those readings were plenty dramatic. You said you had a What Is Your Fave?
Oh, I do.
Let's do it.
What is your fave? What is your fave? When you're presented with a list of options, what is your fave?
All right, so What Is Your Fave is what it sounds like. We have burning questions that need to be answered. Post-apocalyptic burning questions.
And let's keep it post-apocalyptic but posy. What is your favorite instance of surprisingly good writing from this weird-ass men's adventure novel / knockoff of Road Warrior?
It's a dialogue. It's a piece of dialogue, which I think is unsurprising because I feel like that's kind of the best part of this book in a lot of ways. The dialogue is written in such a, I don't want to say naturalistic way because no one talks like this, but if these characters were real people, they would talk like this, I guess. And it's a conversation after an unusually brutal confrontation, and Traveler and Link are talking, and Link says, Link looked at him. "Usually ain't so, don't lose your temper so much, man. What's eating you?" Traveler nodded. "You're right. Something's eating me. How many people have we killed in the last 48 hours? I don't mind popping caps at road rats for a purpose, but, I mean, chasing after this gold, I can't get over the feeling that it's bullshit. That's the kind of feudal bullshit that burned up the world. I can't quite explain." Next on S-Town. But
Okay,
yeah,
next-
I thought that was very, very convincing dialogue. Like, if the Traveler was a real person,
Yeah.
that is how he would talk.
Two things. One, that was my backup dramatic reading.
Oh, really? Awesome.
Because it is one of those moments that kind of subverts the whole premise. And two, now we know that this isn't just a huge influence on The Road. It isn't just a huge influence on later Mad Max. It's also a huge influence on Unforgiven.
Oh.
So not only is this a Western, it's a little bit of a revisionist Western. What if violence isn't the answer, but is still intrinsic to the genre, so you have to have it, really makes you think.
Yeah, there's a famous video game called Spec Ops: The Line that revolves completely around that idea. And the nerds out there listening will know what I'm talking about, but it's a war game that makes it very fun to shoot people, and then by the end, like, is basically chastising you for having so much fun shooting people. So, kind of the same idea, I guess.
Okay, so my example of the unexpectedly good part is actually a bit of description from quite late. And I just found this really evocative and whatever. The candle threw moth-like fragments of light over the grainy, convex surfaces around him. Something scuttled to escape the yellow glow. Candle wax dripped hot on his hands. Like, that was really, like, that sets the scene. It's also 3 quick sentences, and you know exactly where they are.
It's also, by the way, guess who's a horror writer? But yeah, no, it works. You know exactly what he's talking about. And yeah, there are a lot of those kind of subtle moments of description like that throughout the book.
And then if we wanted to say what is your fave bad piece, we would probably both agree, even if it's parody, the car is called The Meat Wagon.
And it's on every fucking page. Like, let's roll into our next game, which is going to be Russian Roulette.
Russian roulette, Russian roulette, Russian roulette, not actually Russian.
All right, so in Russian Roulette, we're going to flip the pages of this book at random and read something from where we land, and I almost guarantee you it's going to contain the phrase meat wagon, because that shit is on every fucking page.
Jesus.
So right now, Collision is holding the book. Begin flippage. Stop.
Whoo boy. The stick fell on Link's wrist. After some wriggling, he got hold of it and used it to pull the short-bladed knife near. He got the knife between 2 fingers and began sawing. The sentry had paused at the stake to take a turn with Jamaica Jack. He used a can opener to saw open the little man's abdomen, letting the glistening intestines flop out, blood-spattered. Jamaica Jack gave a final squeal and lost consciousness. "Hurry it up, Link," Traveler whispered urgently. "They're losing interest in their little game. The game just conked out."
Jesus Christ. So once again, as I mentioned earlier, this is a man who delights in describing gore.
Grim,
To almost
dark, and grim dark. Plus, there's only one kind of can opener that you could use to saw open a man's abdomen. And I have a very clear image of that can opener. And now I have a very clear image of that can opener stuck into a man's abdomen.
It's horrible. Yeah, I mean, this has necroscopic at times when it comes to its treatment of gore. Here we go. I'm flipping now.
Stop.
Wow, I'm way towards the end. Let's see. Where did we end up? He reached up and took the skeleton's hand. "This is it," he thought. "Chances are I pull this and another booby trap will go off. I'll be dead 10 seconds from now." He hesitated. Maybe he should make a play for the shotgun. His chances were slim, but they were better than if he pulled this lever. As if she'd read his mind, the Spike shouted, "Hey, Rug, can you hear me?" "I hear you, Spike," came the answering shout, muffled. "If you hear anything funny like a gunshot or a scuffle, you kill those assholes out there right away. You got me?" "I got you, Spike." Traveler sighed. "Fuck it," he thought. Once again, I mentioned Roddy Piper earlier.
Yeah.
Kurt Russell also.
Oh, extremely.
But this is just so much of that gruff, like, one-liner. Fuck it.
I gotta be honest, I like this so much better than The Man in Black, the Dark Tower series.
It's kind of similar, but way less serious, although I don't think Idris Elba would want anything to do with these books, so maybe I feel like that's the one thing Man in Black has going for it.
No, that's...
The Dark Tower, sorry. Don't want to get emails about that.
He is the Man in Black in it.
Roland is the Man in Black.
Right. Okay. I only
the Gunslinger.
Yeah, the Gunslinger. I only read, I think, the first 2. I might have read the 3rd. I can't remember, but I tapped out pretty early.
I read them all, and by the end, Stephen King has written himself into the story.
Which is awesome.
And actually, it's very interesting because it's almost like, if you read it, it's him kind of relitigating his past and a lot of his previous fiction, and he's very kind of open about his problems with addiction and stuff, but he creates this fictional version of himself that's pretty much just this irresponsible dickhead who's fucking everything up for people in this story world by not finishing his book because he's too busy drinking and doing drugs.
Wait, he wrote a book about George R.R. Martin?
Oh! I'd be willing to bet George R.R. Martin is probably clean, sober, and just lazy by nature.
I think George R.R. Martin, who, by the way, wrote some brilliant early splatterpunk stories of his own.
And I've mentioned Sand Kings on here before. It's an amazing short story.
His Havel and Tough series really changed my life as a very young reader because I'd only read 4 things, and that was one of them.
Before he got into writing 800-page books about dragon titties and feasts, he was quite the interesting writer. Now I feel like I'm reading a travelogue to a place that doesn't exist that's occasionally interspersed with sexual menace and a long description of a meal.
Wow.
We're going to get so much mail. I'm sorry.
I do think that George Railroad Martin, to steal one of my favorite Tom Sharpling disses.
Railroad Martin?
That's why he always, this is a Sharpling joke, that's why he always wears that little choo-choo cap.
Oh, no. Oh, man. Okay. I feel bad. We're just...
You'll never get it out of your head now. No, I think he's probably a great guy, but I also definitely see him. I suspect he lives just down the street from Alan Dean Foster in New Mexico, and they get together. They have one white wine too many every 2 weeks.
Both of them are artificially trying to make their voice sound lower than the other.
Yeah.
Well, George, Alan, I'm not going to take it anymore.
I'm sorry. That's just what I think of when I think of men with gravitas.
That's true, but I'm guessing that they are both really living their best lives, and I begrudge them roughly nothing.
No, me neither. And also, George R.R. Martin has now had to deal with the weird, overlap between the TV show and the books and people pressuring him to put out novels. And I feel like he's just hit Arthur Conan Doyle levels of fuck it. Yeah. And I don't blame him at all.
I mean, he now has 2 separate groups of people who use the word fandom a lot. Yeah. And there's nothing scarier to imagine than that.
I mean, I always go back to thinking about Arthur Conan Doyle killing off Holmes and everyone being like, fuck, why'd you do that? And then he eventually had to give in and bring him back to life, and it's
because he had twin boys in a custody battle.
I feel like Martin's just trying to avoid that embarrassing fake retirement, so he's just dragging his heels, and I don't blame him.
I don't blame him at all.
No. Anyway,
I want to talk about something that you just mentioned, though. You mentioned it being a travelogue to a place that doesn't exist.
Yeah,
and I have this theory, for want of a better word, that there's sort of 2 kinds of particularly post-apocalyptic works.
Yeah.
And one is what you sort of just described, which is basically a fantasy. Mm-hmm. It's very concerned with world building. Mm-hmm. And then there's the other kind, which is primarily a commentary or a satire on actual current events. Mm-hmm. Right? And you can tell the difference because there is almost no world building because honestly, the world is basically given, even if it's being presented to you in kind of a cartoony form or an exaggerated form. So Death Race, which we did months ago as a donor episode, is a good example of that. It's not really about the fall of society. It's about how fucked up things are now.
Or to beat the same drum, The Road.
Right.
And I feel like...
Actually, I think that... No, so I would put The Road as in the former.
Huh.
And I have a corollary theory that the latter is inherently more, serious and more interesting than the former. But that's probably controversial.
I guess what I was thinking more is kind of the journey aspect of it, which this book definitely has because it's a treasure hunt. Right. And it's about people going from place to place to place and having capers. You know what I'm saying? And while I don't think anyone would ever use capers to describe The Road, I guess that's kind of the similarity that I was thinking about is it's about a journey.
Right.
I guess I thought that's what you were getting at and misinterpreted.
Yeah, not so much about the journey, but is the setting more a made-up thing that we're playing in? Or is the setting more or less... here and now, and I'm trying to make some points. And so
we're talking Night of the Living Dead versus Waterworld.
Yeah, exactly. So where would you put, or to put it a different way, Mad Max being the latter versus the Road Warrior being the former.
Oh, good point.
Right?
Okay, yeah.
The Road Warrior is about an actual post-apocalypse and what would shit look like.
And it's horrifying in many ways. And yeah, like,
but it's less scary to me than Mad Max, which is about like just current society, except even worse.
Yeah, I feel like this book does lean more towards the latter. I mentioned Escape from New York earlier offhandedly, but there's definitely that kind of vibe of where you feel like this was written by a man who believes this could happen at any time, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, still to this day, you can find his blog, and he's doing TED Talks, and like, this guy is pretty much convinced society is going to collapse at any moment, and it comes through in this as far back as, you know, like I described it as edgy and feeling kind of punk, and it really definitely comes across that way.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's some interesting points, especially about car culture.
Yeah.
In this, there are at least 2 or 3 scenes where he's really homicidally angry at someone for fucking with his car.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really kind of interesting. And we haven't talked about the rhythm of this book. It is very episodic, but the episodes are very short. And one of the things I really enjoyed was the way you would get these big action scenes, whether it's kind of like a combat scene or a just how to get from point A to point B in a harsh environment scene. And then you would get these kind of reflective periods that we actually read some of. Yeah. Right. And that's actually kind of what it's like to be on a road trip, right? Like you do have lots of time alone, sitting quietly to just think your thoughts.
I've been avoiding the road trip thing because I feel like that lends itself more to cinema than books. But like there is an Easy Rider feel to this almost. Or I mean, if you want to really go to the book world, you could say On the Road in a way.
This is so much better a book than On the Road.
No, yeah, I had a much better time reading it, and nobody gave me that look where they're like, "Look at that asshole."
I don't know. I was flipping through this at the coffee shop eating a bagel, and there was somebody sitting next to me at the counter who gave me like a "what the fuck" and "why does this jackass have a notebook open next to this?"
No, but imagine the look they would have given you if it would have been Kerouac instead. So
that's true. She probably just would have flat out fucking moved.
Yeah, like, I don't want to be near this guy.
A man in his 40s reading Kerouac
in public? I must be in the Bay Area.
I got to set up a GoFundMe to make sure this guy gets a vasectomy.
Yeah. What if you just put a book cover over everything you read to make it look like Catcher in the Rye?
Oh,
that would be awesome at age 38 for me.
Oh my God. You know, we haven't talked about the cover of this book at all.
Oh, we have it, which is basically a drawing of Kurt Russell in a car.
It is. It's basically an action hero with his foot on the dashboard and no hand on the wheel. There's also no visible wheel, shooting a gun. There's an M16 by his foot that's way too small. There's a shotgun also by his foot that's about the right size. And what is his dagger strapped to?
It appears to be hanging from the front of his belt, but is pointing directly between his legs in what can only be described as precarious and quite fucking threatening. Like,
it's not good.
He's a danger to himself and others with his knife there.
The dagger is, I think it's supposed to be coming off his thigh, but in space, it could only be actually hanging off the chair.
Yeah.
Like his car seat. And both the car seat and the dagger were obviously drawn in after the fact.
Very much so.
And the sense of, proportion, the sense of scale, and most importantly, the sense of perspective in all of this is best described as vertiginous.
Well, does our hero engage enemies with a dagger in this book?
He uses a knife to cut his bonds off several times.
Yeah, but it's such a small piece of the book that I don't understand why you would go back after the fact and add that to the cover, because it looks like a mystical sword. We're not talking about like a little.
Oh yeah, this is like blood gutter sporting long ass bayonet style knife. This is a long fixed blade knife.
It's something that your rogue may carry in a World of Warcraft or one of those type of games.
Or it's something that, and this is my attempt to answer your question, why would you go back and draw that knife on? Well, because sometimes when you draw something totally badass on your notebook, you realize the next day that it could be even more badass. And what's the easiest way to make something even more badass? Draw a big fucking knife on it.
There's also like 800 cartridges just like flying around what I can only assume is the interior of his vehicle. So he's probably getting his face burned like crazy. And wow, man.
That's the interior crocodile alligator for sure. He drives a mobile combat theater.
Oh, with sonic ammunition.
Oh, sorry. I just randomly flipped this open after looking at the cover. I'm sorry. I have to read this paragraph. It was a glory boy with a wooden spear through his throat. His eyes were focused on horror, and his hands were stiffened in claws at his throat. Traveler looked the body over and decided he hadn't been dead long. The blood was barely dry.
We haven't talked about the glory boys at all.
We have. Oh my God!
The Glory Boys are essentially the remnants of the U.S. military, except they're now all kind of like into leather. And
who do they worship?
I don't remember.
Is it a very thinly veiled Ronald Reagan?
Oh, you're right. It is. So in a lot of ways, I was reading this and I kept thinking of the Proud Boys and all that nonsense, and the Richard Spencer crowd, and it made me realize once again that like. This book is strangely ahead of its time in some ways when it comes to predicting a horrible dystopian future that we'd all live in the early 2000s.
Yeah. So. Or the horrible dystopia we were living in 1985 when this book was published.
The Glory Boys are one step away from calling their Reagan stand-in daddy at every point in time. So I'm just
100%.
saying.
And they are all obviously sort of proto-Ollie North types.
Yeah.
Like those guys who are super clean-cut and square-jawed, except you look at them and you just know something is deeply, deeply broken inside them.
And it's never explicitly mentioned, but you definitely get a strong kind of Aryan, like racial purity vibe from them as well. At least I did.
I think that's explicitly mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It is. Never mind. Like I said, I read most of this at a bar, so
no, I mean
it's a 158-page book. It's easy to get through in a few pints, and
which is, by the way, the best way I think to read this. I read 98% of this in a hotel room. So.
Yeah, exactly. This isn't even long enough for a plane, really, unless you're just like going like on your little like puddle jumper from here to LA or something like that.
Yeah, you get through most of this between here and LA. Let's do one final game.
Okay. How about most famous fan?
The rich and the famous, but they read books too. The rich and the famous, but they're only a little better than you.
All right, so we're just going to try to figure out who the most famous person that likes this book is. And that's tricky because this book doesn't have much of a footprint. If you go Google for it, man, you're not going to find much.
But I think I'm just going to speculate here, and I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but I'm thinking about two men, probably weren't, tremendous readers, but spent a lot of time on road trips of their own, were kind of warriors, if you could think about it, and would enjoy the kind of fiction that gives them kind of a feeling of a rush, or...
would you be talking about my monsters, the Road Warriors?
I mean, can you just imagine Hawk and Animal sitting in the back seat of somebody's, like, I don't know, what were they commuting in from town to town? Like Ford Taurus?
Yeah, like a Buick LeSabre.
Yeah, right. You're right. It's got to be big enough for meaty men.
With shoulder pads that have spikes coming off.
Right, yeah, because they're traveling from town to town in full face paint. So obviously it's got to be like a Crown Vic.
Yeah.
And believe me, Hawk and Animal spent their share of time in the back seat of a Crown Vic, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, reading Traveler and popping Somas.
Also, Crown Vics are what the cops drive.
Oh, yeah.
At least where I'm from.
Yeah, see, where I'm from, they had Cavaliers, so it's different.
But yeah, can't you just imagine Hawk and Animal like silently reading this and like their lips moving slightly?
Getting pumped up before a match, like flexing their pecs and reading Traveler novels. Oh, what a rush.
You ever think about what it'd be like if we had spears?
So, Hawk, which one of us is Link?
I I think that the most famous fan of this book for me, I'm just thinking about where I could see kind of this aesthetic applied large nowadays, perhaps without a full understanding of the irony inherent. And I'm going to go with the movie director Zack Snyder, who I feel like in many ways like makes movies that feel like this book if it wasn't aware of the fact that it was joking, where it is just over the top bombast and you're supposed to take it seriously. And I feel like probably maybe as a youth he read this kind of stuff and it was hella influential, and he's like, one day I'm gonna make movies where things blow up every 30 seconds.
I'm gonna make a movie like The Road Warrior, but without the content.
Yeah.
I'm visionary director Zack Snyder.
I just more imagine maybe even a complete ignorance of other movies,
right?
And just like reading novels as a teen and being like, man, it's cool when things blow up. Now I have an idea of what I want to do with my life.
Yeah, except he missed the fact that in this book, the only guys flying the American flag, ripplingly and proudly, are the bad guys.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess that's more Michael Bay.
That is Michael Bay.
That's a Michael Bay trademark.
If Michael Bay wrote this book, it would be like, the government is bad, but hey, here comes the cool military.
Here's some heroes.
I have never, ever witnessed a man who so repeatedly has made entertainment products where a military coup is presented as a positive. That's frightening, sir.
You seem like a giant dildo.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Bad Boys was good, though. I really liked Bad Boys. I guess we should go to break, I think.
I really like the part of Bad Boys 2 where they drive through a shanty town.
Yeah, Bad Boys 2 doesn't count. Anyway, let's go to break. All right, welcome back. We have finished traveling and slowed to a crawl, and now we're going to recommend you some stuff. So, Kalijah, why don't you go first?
This is a little tough. I'm going to go a little off script and unrelated. I recently read The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin, and if you haven't read it, you should read it. And if you have read it, you should probably read it again. By a wide margin, one of the most powerful things I've ever read, and surprisingly timely in a kind of depressing way. So, if you're interested in the post-apocalypse, you should know about the apocalypse that we've apparently been living through since pre-civil rights times.
And once again, I realize I should have gone first, because now my recommendation is going to sound like the most facile thing on the planet. But I just, after talking about John Shirley, it just got me thinking about cyberpunk again. And I just wanted to recommend Bruce Sterling's Skits Matrix, which is a very, very cool kind of proto-cyberpunk novel from 1985. It was kind of written around the same time. It's before Mirror Shades. It's before the Difference Engine. Kind of in a lot of ways defined the genre, and it's a good book if you're after that sort of thing, that kind of technological dystopia that also has a little bit of edge to it. But definitely not as serious as Baldwin. So, okay, I'm the dumb one, everyone. You know it already.
That's not true. I think I've recommended more. Oh, yeah, that was the other thing I was going to recommend. So if you also just want a story about the West and traveling through it and adventures, I recommend a movie called Meek's Cutoff by Kelly Reichardt. Which is the most revisionist of revisionist Westerns, the most road-oriented of road movies, and a stone-cold fucking bummer.
I've never seen it, and it sounds cool, so I will check it out.
It is awesome.
I would stay away from just about anything else that's modern that looks like a Western but isn't, because, man, they've been doing that genre dirty for 20 years now.
Yeah, well, Unforgiven.
Unforgiven was good. I'm mostly thinking of Quentin Tarantino right now and seething with rage. But anyway,
Rustler's Rhapsody was pretty good.
Oh, you're right.
Tom Berenger.
City Slickers 2, Legends of Curly's Gold.
Let's see. What else was good?
Futurama.
Yeah.
All right.
Logan. You know.
I mean, yeah, Logan is one of the best Westerns I've seen in a long time. And I don't mean like the hotel. Oh.
It took me a second, but I'm picking up what you're laying down.
That was a little Tom Bodette joke for you there.
I like to enjoy a Holiday Inn, a Best Western.
I see. Well, we'll leave the light on for you, wink. Speaking of which, I believe there's a flashing light on my answering machine that says we've got some letters and an awkward segue.
Hey, letters B, letters C, letters D, letters E, letters M, letters G, letters, got a lot of letters.
Mostly awkward segue, but probably some letters too.
We do. This is a surpassingly on-the-nose letter from Christian fake last name that goes a little something like this.
Will you please do Traveler number 5 Road War?
Weird.
Okay.
I just got recommended the podcast to me a couple of days ago, and now I've listened to 4 episodes. Love it. I recently reread the first Dragonlance book after I cleaned up and found it, and the podcast episode helped me get over just how bad it was. I was wondering, have either of you ever read any of the Destroyer books? They're truly awful, and I absolutely love them. Some of the best so bad they're good books I've ever read. Laughable antagonists, ridiculous plots, racism, they've got it all. And they're all real short. They're also the only books I've read that I'm convinced took me longer to read than it took the authors to write them. So those are the Remo Williams books.
Oh, Remo Williams.
And
I was ducking roulettes in the hood like Remo Williams. That's a fucking Pharaoh Monk. But anyway, sorry.
And that's a movie that I remember disturbingly fondly, despite the fact that it now appears to have been made for about $88.
Yeah, and there were quite a few of them, right?
There was only one movie, I think, unfortunately. But it
TV
was called
specials,
The Adventure Begins, and it just kind of never continued.
For some reason in my head, that's a series, but I'm guessing I'm just thinking of the books.
I think there was some TV. I got curious and looked. So we haven't actually done one of those books. It's safe to say that the seedier bookstores I frequent are aware that I am in the market for things like that. So stay tuned. But in the meantime, enjoy The Traveler.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty damn close. This is also a book you would want delivered to your house in a plain, like, unmarked brown envelope.
Oh, man. Or a book that you would buy at the front of a bookstore that appears to be about 1/4 front room, 3/4 back room.
With the beaded curtain and must be 18 to enter.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or as you mentioned earlier, on a spinning rack at a truck stop.
Exactly.
I feel like that's the natural home of this book.
Side note, if there are other places to get books, please write us, because they're starting to look at me really funny at the truck stop.
Well, I keep going into the library and asking for things like this, so I recently decided I really need to support the library more. I should try that first. And, there's a website and shit, but who can be bothered with the internet, right? Right, podcast listeners? So, I've been asking, how come you guys don't have any DB Drumm?
That is particularly difficult, because longtime listeners know that I do try to get as much of this crap as possible from an actual brick and mortar store.
Yeah.
Which means I absorb a lot of judgmental eyes. It's a very rare bookstore worker who, as our friend did, figured out who I was and is now on the lookout for this stuff because he understands what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Your average bookstore worker looks at me like I'm a terrifying pervert.
Well, I mean, Traveler is tamer than a lot of the stuff that we've sent you into bookstores for, too, so to be fair.
That's true.
But there is that, kind of... There's a way that you could go on the website and look up the closest public library that has a physical copy to check out. And I went looking for this last night because we only have one copy.
Right.
And I had loaned it to Collision. And I went online to the Open Library, and they actually had a downloadable version. Somehow I managed to fuck it up and check the book out and return it, and then it didn't become available again. So it's still checked out, for 2 weeks. Sorry,
no.
folks. That's my fault. But I can't get the damn thing. So I was like, maybe there's a library I can drive to, tomorrow morning early. The closest library to us that has this is in Arizona.
For a library to have this is a disturbing, problematic thing.
I guess that's a good point. But yeah, from From my house, you would have to drive over 600 miles,
Right.
if you wanted to grab the Traveler from the public library.
Bruh, I drove 400 miles to see Blue Oyster Cult last night.
And I would walk 500 miles just to Haver or something.
A song my mom famously chuckled at before turning the radio off and saying, "Ah, the power of pussy."
Here's a good story real quick.
Thanks, Mom.
And this one goes out to a longtime friend and supporter and shadow producer Casey Occolini. At his wedding, he had karaoke. They played 500 Miles. He asked me and a couple of the other groomsmen to sing the song. The lyrics that came up on the screen were actually from the Down by Law cover version, which includes the phrase, "If I haver, whatever the fuck that means." And I knew it was coming, so I didn't say it, but the other two guys did the whatever the fuck that means in front of Casey's new in-laws and everybody else who was there to celebrate his marriage. So that's a fun little Proclaimer story. Casey, that one's for you, buddy.
Yay, marriage! All right, well, while we're going down this this road,
Yes.
this episode is, as always, dedicated to our supporters on Patreon, and I want to say that this one is in particular dedicated to a particular listener, my friend Tin Zeros, who's been with us since very close to the beginning of when I jumped on, and who turned me on to John Shirley way back in the day, and who is basically responsible for me reading this thing.
Yeah, well,
So,
thanks, because I enjoyed it too.
you may remember him as the guy who called in once to say, beef jerky.
Boing!
Yeah. Other hyper supporters we have to call out. Tom, Jonathan, Jack, Kathleen, hi Mom, Rich, Daniel, Patrick, as always, thank you so much. Sorry there's not a poem this time around. I just ran out of time. I will make it up to you somehow, I promise.
It always makes me so happy when you read Daniel and Patrick's name in order, because I'm like, yeah, Daniel Patrick likes the show. We need someone named Stuart to also donate so we can say him right after Patrick, and then it'll be like one of those band names where it's like two names shoved together.
Right.
Daniel Patrick Stewart.
Brian Jonestown Massacre.
Yeah.
That's sort
John
of like that,
Cougar.
right?
Oh, not going there. All right.
Yeah, no, that one was like one of those like, yeah, that's
That's
the
funny.
name. That's the name you call yourself in the rehearsal space, and
Yeah.
then don't talk about elsewhere.
As far as I know, Brian Jonestown Massacre is now just BJM. I don't think they use the full name anymore.
Oh, like KFC.
Yeah, or yeah, exactly.
Because you know they're not allowed to say that because it's not actually chicken. By the way,
They're putting fucking chemicals in the water to mind control you.
Anyway, if you want to get in touch with us, and based on the letters we get, you do, so please continue. Do so at I don't even own a television at gmail.com. If you want to follow us on Twitter, it's at IDEOTVPod. On Facebook at the same place. There's also an even more fun place on Facebook that you can interact with us and our delightful fans.
The Party Pit!
I'm sorry, what was that?
The I Don't Even Own a Television Fun Time Party Pit. It's a Facebook group with over 1,000 cool people who want to talk to you about bad books.
And
I just
getting
made
there-
it sound like a weird Sickles line. I'm sorry. Like, 1,000 people want to talk to you about bad books. I want to talk to you. 1-900-IDEOTV. All right, sorry.
Actually, I think it's 614 IDEOTV is our actual phone number if you want to leave us a voicemail.
But neither of us will pick up the phone lasciviously. I'm sorry, it goes straight to voicemail.
Or will I?
Oh, shit.
Will I be with my hair feathered in my finest lingerie, just lounging around a weirdly flesh-colored couch
Why does that rug have a head?
with
And
soft lighting?
What is sexy about a fireplace anyway?
Hi, I'm Collision, and I'm looking for horny singles. No, I'm really not.
No, if you were alive in the late 90s, you know what we're talking about. Otherwise, you just think we're hella weird right now. So maybe it's a good time to stop.
I think that's probably a great idea. So before we run into an ambush, let's cut it short. And until next time,
Keep riding the meat wagon.
catch the crab.
The summer is here at last. The sky is overcast, and no one brings a rose for Emily.
I Don't Even Own a Television is a production of IDEOTV Enterprises and Landing on Brand LLC. Our producers are J.W. Friedman and Chris Collision, with special thanks to Casey Occolini. This episode has been brought to you by Junkbox, the only way to get a box of plastic toys and shit delivered to your door every month for an exorbitant price. Visit junkbox.bullshit and enter coupon code BOOKSARESTUPID for 30% off your first shipment. Next time on I Don't Even Own a Television, another book.